Okay, I created this video because I was looking for some information about how other podcasters or what other podcasters use for show notes. I Googled Evernote podcasting and really didn't find anyone out there using Evernote for their podcast show notes. So I thought I'd make this quick video to show people how I use Evernote for my podcast show notes. So the first thing I do is I either load the application on my computer and my co-host computer, or just have the web browser come up and just access Evernote through the web browser, and that's what I've done here. So once I basically have both machines logged on to Evernote, basically we are using the same, not basically, we are using the same account. So the same account is logged on both machines. We both get access to Evernote. So let me show you just real quick how I have it set up. Right here you'll see that I have several notebooks that I've set up. First and foremost, I've set up an email notebook. Now, that is the default notebook, and it has been set up so that I can send myself an email to my Evernote address or email address. Every Evernote account has an email address associated with it. So that means on my iPad or iPod, whatever I'm using, or heck, it could be on a computer. If I'm somewhere and I don't have a device with me, or I just have my phone, I can actually email myself things, and it will automatically come in here to this email notebook within Evernote. So that's really cool. I can give that email address out. So if somebody wants to talk about something and they find some information, or they're doing some research for me, they can just directly email me. And that information will show up in my Evernote notebook called email. So that's pretty cool. I kind of like that feature. Another thing you'll see is what I have set up here is something that they call, I believe it's stacks. And so that's where all my notebooks live for my podcast. So I just called this podcast, I called this stack podcasts. So in there I have my Average Joe podcasts. So that's all the show notes that we utilized for Average Joe's for episode 4. Again, I'm pretty sure most of you have probably seen Evernote, but the reason I like it is because you can add hypertext there, so you can actually go quickly to websites and things. And you can add pictures and all kinds of stuff. So I like it. What we do is, again, I'm logged into one machine through a web browser, and my co-host is logged into the other, so we can share the same notes. Now, before the show, what we do is we kind of update those notes. The thing that you got to be aware of, though, is you really can only update one at a time. So you got to kind of work together. So I'll tell him, enter your show notes, and then when he's done, I'll tell him to synchronize, and then I'll come over, and then I will synchronize within my web browser, so I get his changes. I'll make my changes and additions and all that good stuff, hit synchronize, look over and tell him, hey, go ahead and synchronize. So that way we both have the same information. So you'll see here's my other podcast that I have called Beaver Creek Tactical Podcast. So it's set up the same way. And then what we do is I set up a notebook that's just my Average Joe's information. Here's where we keep information for future shows, or we have some notes for previous shows. And it's just something we can constantly update and come to, and we can copy and paste to the show notes when we need it. So it's really just kind of an ongoing working area. So another reason I like Evernote with the podcast is while we're talking about things, we can look back at other podcast show notes that we have tagged, and if we're talking about something, we can immediately go to that additional note. If we were talking about, in this instance, you'll see something that says Duck Dynasty, so we've tagged one note there. Drugs, we've talked about drugs, and it looks like probably 2 episodes of Average Joe's, so we can easily recall both of those notes that we have tagged. So we really like using Evernote. So I would be curious, one, if other people have used Evernote or what you are using, and two, if you've ever tried using Evernote and the reason you haven't continued using it, maybe you've had some failure with it or something. But hopefully this kind of gives you a quick, brief look at Evernote and how I use it to create my podcast show notes. All right, if you like this, let me know. And leave me some comments, again, about what you've used for your show notes. Thanks.